Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Sorry, it's cues and things happening this evening. So I have a lovely guest with me this evening. Her name is Orah, and she lives in Philadelphia, America. So welcome, Orah.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be on your show. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Yeah, it's been forever. You grew up in Pretoria, and I used to look after you.
You did, and did a very excellent job at it.
Oh, tough, flattery get you everywhere, everywhere. Yes, yes. And I think, especially when it comes to the Northern Hemisphere, you've been everywhere, right? So tell us a little bit about you. You grew up in South Africa. Okay, so I'll let you take it away. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So was born in Cape Town, actually. We moved to Pretoria when I was 2, and we lived in Pretoria until I was 13. Um, and I went to school in Johannesburg and Pretoria, Cape Town. And then when I was 13, my father, who's a doctor, got recruited to work at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. And we moved on over to Canada. Very big difference to South Africa, obviously, leaving lots of close friends and a few family members behind, which was not easy. And yeah, so I did high school in Montreal, and then I spent some time in Israel, and then I came to college in America, married an American husband, and have been living here ever since.
Okay, okay. And I mean, you were quite young when you left. How was it integrating for people who have children maybe the same age who are thinking of immigrating? What as you experienced that, what were the sort of pros and cons to that, leaving South Africa at that age and then discovering this entire new world?
Yeah, so that was definitely difficult. I left it was the middle of grade 7 in South Africa, and so it was, the American summer was like July, August time. So we moved to Montreal, and I started a new grade. I started grade 8, and it was a very difficult year. Obviously, new weather changes. You get quite cold in Montreal. It goes down easily to -30, -40 degrees Celsius. But as South Africans, we hear -30, and I mean, I remember going to Johannesburg some mornings and it was 1 degree, and I couldn't imagine. I mean, it was freezing. How could you imagine -30? But honestly, I mean, the houses are built for it. There's gear built for it. The country has been set up. Just for example, all the windows are double glazed. You go into any store, any house, there's a door that you come into, and then you close that door and you open another one that goes into the house. So the cold never fully comes into the house. Central heating is a must. Just certain things like that. And obviously, meeting new friends. Everyone has been together since they're 5 in the same school with the same friends. So the first year was a little challenging, friends wise, and just getting used to everything. And then that following summer, July, August, we actually came back as a family, came back to South Africa and saw all our friends. I mean, I remember daily I would, buy international calling cards and sit at my recess, at my break times during school, and call all my friends in South Africa, because I missed them, and it was all new to me, and I'd never known anything different. And after that summer that I spent in South Africa, we came back to Canada, and I think that was really a turning point for me. And I went into the new school year, grade 9, with a renewed sense of, okay, this is where we live, and I'm excited, and this is going to be an amazing time for me and my family.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was really a turning point for me. Thank God my parents were very supportive and, you know, didn't negate my feelings at all, completely validated, you know, oh, of course, or we, you know, I'm sure you miss them. And I had weekly Skype dates with friends, and, you know, they did everything in their power to help me, you know, adjust. And thank God we were very blessed that the Montreal community welcomed us with open arms. You know, we were invited to people's bar mitzvahs and weddings and Shabbos meals and, you know, weekend parties and all of that. Even, I mean, they didn't really know us, but yet we were the new family and they wanted to make us feel welcome. And so that also really, really helped, you know, going into a community that is, you know, waiting with open arms, you know, whatever faith-based, you know, if people have religion, if people have faith, that definitely helped me, you know, integrate into, you know, our new city.
Okay, community. And what was the biggest, I think, the difference for you? Like the biggest difference, like what did you see? My gosh, we're not in South Africa anymore. Is what it completely different, obviously? Were people as friendly? Were people and also, okay, we'll come to the language question now. Did you have to learn French?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
So I would say the biggest difference, I mean, I remember we arrived to Montreal on a Thursday, and that Shabbos, you know, we, as a religious Jew, we go to the synagogue on a Saturday morning sometimes, and you know, I said to my mother, I was 13 years old, okay, mommy, you know, I'm ready to go, and she said, no, you know, you can go by yourself. And I thought to myself, well, I've never been anywhere by myself before. You know, I mean, it was literally down the block. I didn't have to cross any streets, anything like that. So I said, oh, okay. You know, she said, no, or, you know, you're very capable, 13-year-old, you can go and, you know, take your sister along. So I had a 4-year-old sister at the time. And I remember we were walking around and we're looking, and she said to me, Orah, I can see houses, you know, because there are no, you know, at that point there were no fences, there was no, you know, walls around people's homes. So that was a huge difference for me, you know, just getting used to that. You know, just different expectations of what I'm allowed to do and what I was not able to do beforehand. You know, taking the public bus home from school, you know, it's dark, I mean, sun sets very early in the winter, so the sun was
what
setting at around 4:30.
wow, okay.
um, you know, so the sun was setting. I finished school at 5:30, and sometimes, you know, I wanted to come home with my friends on the bus. It wasn't even a school bus; it was a city bus, dark, you know, city bus, and no problem. You know, a bunch of 14, 15-year-old girls just taking the bus home, and it was totally normal. So I remember that being a huge difference for me. Which, you know, it definitely took time getting used to, but it was wonderful. Um, so yeah, so that was one difference. The community, I mean, there's something special about the South African openness and authenticity and warmness that is unparalleled anywhere else. I mean, I've been out many years, and I say to my mom often, you know, I feel so South African still, you know, because we have this expectation, you know, this warmness, this openness, this, you know, welcomingness, welcomingness that, you know, is very unique to South Africans. That being said, you know, you almost have to look at what other people can offer, and majority of times they have a lot to offer. So thank God we were privileged to see that side of people. You know, people invite, as I said, you know, people inviting us, people opening their homes, people, you know, making us like family, you know, which was, you know, including us in their family events, because they knew that we didn't have family in Canada. You know, so whether it was a holiday meal that, you know, people's cousins and uncles and aunts and grandparents were coming to, and us, you know, and that's how we also met. You know, let's say we're friends with, you know, we're friends with a couple, and then we're friends with their siblings and their parents and their extended family, because that's, you know, something that was
Right.
helpful for us. Something else, as I was saying, that struck me, you know, I grew up by the age of, you know, 13. I had one grandparent still alive. All the others had passed away. And moving to Canada, something that struck me was a lot of people had grandparents and great grandparents still alive.
Oh.
So that definitely adds a different dynamic and a different understanding. And for me, when we moved, a lot of my friends' grandparents were Holocaust survivors. Growing up in South Africa, where majority of the Jewish community is from Lithuania, um, who came before World War II, we didn't have that knowledge. Holocaust survivors were more from the storybooks, or the speaker that came once a year or whatever it was.
Yeah, to school to tell
So
us. Yeah.
seeing that, going to synagogue, going to family parties, and seeing my friends' grandparents with numbers on their arms, having them tell stories was, again, a whole different dynamic, and something that I was very interested to find out more about. We still have family friends. The family friends themselves are 80 and they still have parents alive.
Wow.
That's just so unheard of. But thank God, the quality of life in Canada is very good. The medical system is very different to South Africa, because it is a socialized medical system. And in South Africa, we're used to more of a private medical system.
If you're lucky
But
enough to afford it today. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's definitely a very good point. So in Montreal, everyone will get healthcare. Sometimes you'll have to wait for it, sometimes a very long time, but everyone will get the healthcare that they need. So
Mhm.
that was also, my father being a doctor, that was definitely a system that he had to integrate into. But I mean, it's a huge plus, because people do get seen to. There are hospitals. Yes, that was another
Brilliant.
big difference.
Brilliant. So I just made a note here. Is it a South African thing to always say Because I say all the time.
I think it's honestly this generation. There we go again.
Um,
Uh, I think maybe because we can, there's a lot of well, you can write something and just erase it a second later. So you don't have to pre-think. You
mm,
just write, oh, well, if
yeah,
I or if I can say this, I can just edit it away. Um,
like we may do tonight, but we hopefully won't do too much editing. Uh, so yeah, and also you were talking about how all the houses have central heating, etc. Are the electricity costs like astronomical? Is it an easy process? Is there gas? Is there solar? Okay, now you're in America, but in Canada, being a very people really need a lot of electricity in Canada. So how does that work? I know obviously in South Africa, we being ripped at we have load shedding. We've had load since what 2000 and the beginning of I think 2000 and what was it 3? No, I still remember it. Was it 2007? Was it as late as that still? It feels like it's forever. I think it's for me, it's just, and we've become so used to it, and it's actually ridiculous. It's
mm,
actually ridiculous. So, in Canada, you wouldn't even think of load shedding or something
mm.
like that.
No,
No.
that was all. I remember having, power outages in South Africa. No, we didn't have load shedding, but we had the power outages. And, everyone always had, a flashlight. In South Africa, everywhere, you know where the flashlights are in case of a power outage.
Mm.
And coming to America, that I remember, like, I said something to my friend about a flashlight or a power outage. They said, oh, we can't even remember one of those. It's like not even like a common thing, which
Mm.
again for me was a huge change.
Mm.
Yeah, but Canadians, on the whole, are very earth conscious and environmental conscious. So they have their ways of doing electricity in in a way that's not going to ruin the whole ecosystem and environment.
Mhm.
They are very into recycling. It's a law that you have to recycle.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how it is in South Africa now with recycling.
No, we're getting there slowly. But I feel like we're going back in time. Like there are good things happening, thank goodness. But it's not happening nearly as fast enough as it should. And there's no money for things. All the projects should be government implemented in an idealistic system. There should be, you see these guys pulling these big sort of bag wagons. They're still around. You remember them collecting all the rubbish on the rubbish day, digging in the dustbins. I mean, it's just crazy. I'm glad where I stay, there's a guy who comes dustbin day and the day before dustbin day, and I put out my recycling, and I know he goes through all the bins, but I mean, what he gets for that is pathetic. I think it's like he gets something like 43 cents. Don't quote me, but pathetic, like per kilo of reusable plastic or something. It's just
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's actually so unfair.
So
Mm,
yeah, so I mean, so we have, I know that in Toronto now, where my parents live, garbage only gets collected every 2 weeks
sure.
because they're expecting you to not only recycle, but there's also composting.
Right.
So any food at all goes into the composting, and then you
Yes.
have recycling that comes. And I mean, they're also very strict with recycling. I remember one of our first weeks in Montreal, we were getting used to this whole recycling thing, and we had thrown out a bottle of milk. We had finished the bottle of milk, put the carton in the recycling bin. And Montreal, the primary language is French, and so my mother got a knock at the door the one day, and she didn't know who was that, why are they coming, and there was a recycling man who had come to pick up, in their big truck, and they come and they pick up all the recycling, and he said, "You didn't wash out your milk bottle." And she said, "Well, what does that even mean?" No, because they want to do the recycling properly. When you throw out a milk bottle, when you throw out a tin can of chickpeas or something, you have to rinse it and make sure that there's no food left in that item. So it's definitely takes getting used to, but it's a whole different way of thinking. So environmental conscious, and thinking about the future, and yeah. So that was also something.
I think just on that note, I'm keen to I'm keen to go. Um, and electricity costs, gas, do they use gas? No. It's
Yes,
all
there is gas. They use gas a lot for cooking, like gas stoves, gas
easy.
ovens. Some people have gas heating. Some people have electrical heating. It really depends on your setup in your home. But it's really, I mean, it's not something that like people are, going on and on about. It's, the prices are, thank God, you know, are reasonable. And I mean, some people have solar panels. It depends on, your own personal thing, but it's not a
Structure.
governmental thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and the malls, like I've heard they're malls under the ground because it's so cold. They actually have malls. That's crazy. Okay, so give me your favorite mall, like in
Um,
Montreal.
so it's really fascinating. So basically, a lot of life happens underground in the winter in Montreal because of the cold. And that's another thing that, they say, okay, winter's upon us. Doesn't mean that life has to stop. There was
Mm.
another thing I remember we had to get used to. I feel like a lot of times in South Africa, you get a party invitation or an event invitation and it says weather permitting.
Yes.
Never, never in Canada does it say weather permitting,
Wow.
because it's snowing from October to May. So you can't, you can't just shut down. I mean, obviously, different years. Some years there's no snow until January. Etc. But they say that it can snow from October to May. So there are apartment buildings that have access to the underground system. The subway system from their apartment building. So you can literally leave your apartment not wearing any coat, boots, anything, wearing totally normal clothing, go downstairs to the apartment, go downstairs to the subway station, which is heated. Everything is heated because it gets so cold. So you go downstairs to the subway, get on the subway, take it to the underground mall, go straight from the subway system into the underground mall, shop the whole day, never having to hold your coat, never having to take off your boots because you're too hot, overheat, and then again go back and you've just had an amazing day out, and it's -30 with 10 inches of snow outside, but you would never know.
Wow.
So yeah, but the underground malls are really fantastic. They and a lot of, so there's actually 3 malls that are connected to each other, all underground. Again, because each mall has their own stores and their own thing, but
Mhm.
they don't want you to have to go outside and put on your coat, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, you can go. There's restaurants there. There's
Sure.
everything. Indoor amusement parks. So it's just a different world.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and also for the winter, in South Africa, I feel like we dressed a lot with layers. You wear an undershirt and a sweater and a this and a scarf, and if you're inside or outside, it doesn't matter. You're still wearing the same layers.
Still freezing.
In Canada, that was a huge difference. You pretty much wear the same clothes all year round, and you just put on a coat and boots in the winter or a scarf and whatever, but you're only putting on the extra layers when you go out. So when it comes to the malls also, that's why it's fine. You're going to the mall, you don't need the coat. Or let's say you have one coat. Every mall, every event that you go to has a coat check at the front of the event. You coat check the coat, and then you're totally fine, because inside is heated until who knows what. And if you would wear layers, you would overheat.
Yes, obviously gadgets, technology. So what was like the easiest thing for you to learn, or did it just flow naturally, or what was something that you thought, wow, that's strange, or that's so cool, I need to, like the bus system, or so what was that like?
So one of the big things for us was unlimited internet, which was not available in South Africa when I left. I'm not sure if it's available now.
Yeah, but you pay for it.
So, the norm was unlimited internet. So you would come home and people would, watch movies on their phones or on their computers or whatever, Skype, FaceTime, it was just, you wouldn't even think of, dial up, is it capped? Oh, is it this? Oh, is it that? So that was definitely different. And then, getting used to the different, whether it was the app for the subway, or trying to navigate that. I can't remember exactly. I mean, nothing else stands out to me about the technology. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot that I, had to get used to. But yeah, that I remember that being something of like, oh wow, there's internet and it works. It's fast. It's unlimited.
And you don't have to wait for buffer. Okay, now I mean, especially in the last year, our internet has gotten like of a superior quality. But there still happens if too many users are using the same internet or whatever, there's still buffering that happens. But so
there's definitely there's every place has their internet problems, but that was definitely something new.
And what about, I mean, on my bucket list, it's kind of, I'd love to do the Yellowstone National Park and then go up into Canada and do like, obviously look at whale. I don't know if like the whale breeding. I know that a lot of whales come and bring their young up to feed in Canada. I'm a big whale and dolphin, like I love them. So yeah, that's on my bucket list. Did you go to beautiful places in Canada, like nature wise?
Yeah, so we did. In South Africa, we were privileged to go on a holiday every year to the beach, to the sea. So obviously we didn't have, beaches in North America are very, very different to South Africa. People, would constantly say, oh, just come with us to this and this beach, and we'd go and we'd be like, sorry, what are you calling this a beach? Where's the sand? Where's the hot sand? So there's nothing like the South African, the beaches in South Africa. And still, after being to many different places in America and Canada, I can say for sure that, the beaches in South Africa are unparalleled. So we chose to go more nature. We went to Northern Ontario, Sudbury, Niagara Falls, went to and in Quebec, which is the province of where Montreal is. There is beautiful, beautiful countryside, up in the Laurentian Mountains. We went often. There's a place and then also it's very easy to cross before the pandemic, it was very easy to cross the border. So, upstate Vermont, upstate New York, was, about 2 to 3 hours for us. So we would, go there for vacation. A bunch of our friends had vacation homes in a place called Loon Lake. And, they would invite us. There was a beautiful lake and the houses around and just very relaxing. So, yeah, so we did, tour Quebec, tour Ontario a little bit. Niagara Falls, I mean, is beautiful. We've been there quite a few times, things like that.
Okay, brilliant. And then you decided, what made you're a psychologist?
Social work.
Sorry, forgive me. Social work.
Okay.
It's been a while. So what? But I think actually in South Africa, well, social work, I'm sure you do a lot more. Okay, so explain what is a social worker in the North? Because I think here in South Africa, we've got a different idea of maybe what it is compared to what a social worker would be here in South Africa.
Okay, so social work is actually a very, very broad degree. You can do so much with the actual MSW Master of Social Work. Okay, so it, you can see patients privately in your own private practice. There are different licensures that you have to get in order to do that. So I'm working towards that. So I've gotten my first license, which is the L. So I'm now a licensed social worker.
Okay.
And now to my next license that I have to get is a clinical license. So then that would make me an LCSW. That requires me to have 3,000 supervised hours plus taking a test. And then there's a whole nother license if you want to be a licensed clinical social worker, have your own private practice, and be able to bill insurance. I don't know if mental health services are covered by the South African medical insurance, but over here,
Well, yeah. But so like, so there is still not yet, and the government wants to implement the national health system, which it's there's just no money. They haven't even gotten it right, like up till now. And it's something I'm personally against. In an idealistic world, I would love it to be that way, but they've just stolen all the money. I think had 1994, I suppose we were all living in this little fluffy dream cloud that South Africa was going to be this beautiful rainbow nation, and we still are a very positive and happy people. We've learned to laugh at ourselves, but I think things are really just hectic at the moment, and I don't know if they're going to improve. The ANC has to literally be toppled over, and we've only got a few other parties to do, but it's just right now it seems like a massive Mount Everest we have to climb. But sorry, I interrupted you. You were talking about, so in South Africa there is no national health system. There was the government system and the private system. The government system was still, I mean, they had a perfectly good working system in the 1990s, and it basically went to dreck because nothing was maintained. Even infrastructure, we talk about load shedding, they keep saying, oh, it's infrastructure, it's maintenance, blah blah blah. It's all nonsense. Water, thank God, where I stay, it was a DA1 run ward, but there's something now happening in Pretoria where they've toppled that over and done an audit, and now the ANC has taken it back again. So, but things, thank God, I still have a ward councillor that does amazing work. But sorry, so you were talking, yeah. So it's hard in South Africa to say national health. You go to the government hospitals, but you could wait days. You could literally die waiting.
wow, wow,
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit depressing, but
yeah.
it's I think the vast difference, and I think that's what South Africans, and I think South Africans are fearful to travel. I think what I wanted to convey, maybe from your experience, is to let South Africans know it's important to travel. It's important to go overseas, to look at your options. Anything is possible if you
Yeah,
really want it
no,
badly enough.
that's for sure. I mean, when I feel like, Americans especially don't, they think that America is the world. So they don't necessarily know anything much beyond America. So when people say, oh, well, where are you from? They're expecting to say New York, New Jersey, Chicago, LA. And I'm like, oh, South Africa. What? Where is that? The amount of comments that I've gotten, oh, well, if you're from South Africa, why are you white? I was like, well, there's a lot of, all different types of people in South Africa. And then, I've had a lot of people say to me, if they're more of the Christian faith, I've had people say to me, oh, were your parents, on a mission there? And that's why you were born in South Africa, because they just didn't, how can someone white be born in South Africa?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's just so much misconception and misunderstanding of what South Africa is. Oh, wow, did you ride your lion to school?
Yes. Yeah, that's the
I
common one.
didn't know if they
Yeah.
were serious,
Yes.
So it definitely is. So at first I used to get really upset about it. Now I use it as a great icebreaker um, for conversations. So yeah, so people, at first I just, weirded out. I'm married to an American who's a first generation American, and he constantly says to me, he's like, if you would have asked me, when I was in college, if I would have been married to an African, you know, and then and I mean, now I use it to my advantage, anything that, I've still kept a lot of my South African values and manners and all of that. And, we set the table differently, something as simple as that. Whether it be the knife and fork and spoon and where everything is and the side plate and the butter knife and all that. And, people come to my table and say, well, what do I do with this? And I, explain to them, well, this is what we use the
Your
butter
mother's
knife.
brought you up well, Orky.
Yeah.
Very well, very well.
And, they were like, well, why do you do that? And instead of going into the whole, explanation, I was like, it's because I'm African, you know. And so, and I've had friends who say to me, "Oh, you can't use that as an excuse for everything." I was like, "Well, why not? It's a great one, you know." So I find myself say, as much as I've been out of the country for, a long time, I find myself using that excuse more and more because I learned so much from South Africa, and there's so much in me that's still South African that has, stood me in such good stead, and so.
And you told me, so we actually connected. So just a little segue here. Sorry, guys. Um, so Orah and I were actually together on September 11th, 2001. Yes, was it? Yes. And we watched the towers fall on CNN when South Africa would still get CNN on normal television, local television. And then we spoke, and that's how I reconnected with you. And you were telling me about how you've connected with other Africans. So tell me a little bit about them, like people from the continent of Africa. So who and so tell
Yeah.
me. Yes.
So yeah, so I find it very interesting. As I said, everyone has their different mentality, everyone has different cultural norms. And I found the South African family structure is, my experience with it was very close. People value family relationships and, want to be in touch with their family. And we're looking for that connection and we value that connection. And so, whatever workplace I've been at, um, I've looked out those people. I've gravitated more towards Africans in general, and I mean international people in general also. Whether it be English people, but at my most recent place of work, I was working in a retirement facility. We call it here a nursing home, and a lot of older, geriatric folk. And one of the head nurses was from Africa, not from South Africa, and her and I just clicked and connected. And she was a lot older than me. She had kids who were older than me, and we just had this understanding and this connection with each other that transcended words almost. Like, and I mean, it's funny. Like, I mean, people here are like, well, Orah, you're white. Even here, unfortunately, there is racism. Or you're white, and you're from South Africa where people hated black people. How could you be speaking to this, black person? I was like, I see color, but it doesn't make a difference for me. I see a person as who they are. And, that's the way I was brought up in South Africa and in Canada. And, so she was one of my closest people, living there. And another, the person who was head of staffing in HR was also, a darker skinned lady with, from, I think she was from Cameroon, and bestest of friends. We just had this connection. Literally we had known each other for 2 weeks. She's like, oh, you feel like my sister, so, but I mean, that's in general for me. I found that I connect a lot closer with people who are international and foreign, because I think Americans see South Africans and they're like, well, I don't really know what to do. Like, is she normal? Is she going to talk to me? What is she going to talk? What is she going to say? What are her expectations?
Yeah.
I mean, something that you wouldn't know, but my accent has actually changed over the years. So that's also a huge topic starter, a conversation starter is, people will, oh, or where you from? My accent is like a mix between American and Canadian.
Mm.
And I'll say, oh, I'm from South Africa. What? You don't sound like you're from South Africa, you know? And I was like, oh yes, and then it's like the whole, like literally I can have a placard of like with all the answers of all the questions that I get. Oh, your accent doesn't sound like you're from South Africa. Oh, well, when I speak to my family, or actually when I speak to my children, which is very interesting because they were both born in America. But when I speak to my parents or when I speak to my children, my South African accent comes out. Oh, can you please just put it on for us? No, it's actually a subconscious thing. One day I'm going to do a study and I'll, quote you in it, and so,
Sure.
so
And I
um,
think when you speak to, because you sound like, now we've been talking, and I think you sound more South African to me, and I can just imagine your twang when you go outside.
yeah, no, so it's definitely interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, brilliant stuff. Well, I'm trying to think if there was anything else. There were, but I can't think of it now. But thank
You
you.
want me to go back to the social work thing?
Yes. Yes. Sorry. So let's continue there.
Yeah.
So with this lockdown, with the world changing so drastically, how do you think, obviously it's important for people to reach out and to people to feel that they're not alone. And I think that's what I wanted to say as well quickly. The thought was, I think by being from a place, and you are someone who's not from where you are, you're international. I think that's the reason you bond with other international people, because you get what it's like to be
Yeah.
a stranger amongst the nations, or
Yeah.
amongst excuse the pun there. So yes, so social, I think social work now, and I think there's going to be a massive need for people, for social workers, for psychologists, for people to engage. um I think it's very important. So yes, so just how have you seen the industry and your sort of um region, like your expertise and things needed now, I suppose, more than ever.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a huge advocate for mental health care. I believe that everyone, has a need for some sort of mental health care at some point in their life. And it's not necessarily always because you're struggling. It's sometimes because people want to go through growth. And that's what social workers and psychologists and mental health providers are there for as well. So now, especially when there's so much stress and there's so much unknown, and there's so much confusion, with the pandemic and with everything else going on in the world, the need for mental health care has skyrocketed. Something that's very beneficial is that telehealth has begun and really taken off. So people are really benefiting from that, where in the past they would have to, try and coordinate schedules. Let's say they were working 13-hour days, and then they'd have to try and coordinate, a therapist schedule with their schedule, with a childcare schedule. Now there's none of that they have to coordinate. People can see therapists in another country on another time zone because
Mm,
everything's over Zoom or everything's over FaceTime or Skype or whatever it is.
mm,
So that's really been very beneficial. But yes, people are definitely struggling. People just naturally, psychologically, we like having consistency. We like knowing where we stand. We like having,
routine.
boundaries, routine. And I think, as much as people are trying with this pandemic, no one really knows what's going on.
Mm,
We're at the beginning, people were saying wearing gloves. Now people are not. I mean, at least in America, people are saying, gloves doesn't really matter anymore. People are saying wear this type of mask, wear that type of mask, social distancing. You can see people outside with masks, without masks. There's so many different conflicting opinions that it's very nerve-wracking for people, and that in and of itself is nerve-wracking.
mm,
People are, then they say, okay, well, Zoom school is great, but what about both parents who have to work and do Zoom school and take care of all the kids at home and still maintain their mental health?
mm,
So there's a lot to juggle with this pandemic.
mm,
And there, thank God, is a lot of, because of the telehealth, people are able to get, hopefully, the help that they need. So that's just talking about, the private clinical care. not to mention, all the nursing homes, unfortunately, the pandemic is affecting, the older generations a lot more. So people are being hospitalized and then they want to go into nursing homes for rehab or, maybe be admitted to, nursing homes. So, and then, you have to deal with, well, what if an older person comes in from the hospital and they're COVID positive? Then, do you let them into your nursing home at risk of infecting everyone? So it's there's a lot of laws. Governmental officials have taken that into their power, and then there's also, the private nursing homes get to make their own rules as well. So there's a great need for social workers in that realm. So that is a job that social workers would do regarding, the homeless population or people with disabilities. People aren't able to work as much or earn as much. So more people need food stamps, more people need homes, more people need financial help, more people, so that is all on the social work, the social work domain. So the social workers are very, very, very busy at the moment, and just trying to put out fires. And, obviously, the more stress in a person's life, the more unhappiness within themselves, people's relationships are crumbling. You're in a house lockdown for 4 months, to get along with someone, even if you love them, for 4 months is very, very stressful. So trying to put out those fires and then add in the fear of getting sick, add in the financial worry, add in, your kids are fighting and you don't know how to keep them afloat. It's a lot. So, but I think that's the pandemic in general, wherever you are, whether it be America, South Africa. I mean, the whole world is trying to figure themselves out.
The fact that it's happening in America as well, and they're so organized, and here where everything's a total, excuse my French, shitstorm. I mean, we've had word that, I mean, it's close to some people say 3 million jobs. We've got I think it was a 40% unemployment rate currently. So there's not even that tax haven anymore. And now, I mean, a friend of mine told me that her company as well is going to probably retrench very shortly or cut salaries. I don't think we even realize how much this is going to affect us. I mean, we were planning on coming overseas this year. We were going to go to Israel or go to, I was hopefully, go to Europe. It was weird. It felt in the beginning of the year, 2020 felt incredible. There was such a vibe. And then all of a sudden, by March, but for us it was March, you guys it was February.
Yeah. Well, we shut down at the beginning of March.
Yeah, everything's shut down, and it's just, I don't know, I really hope we don't look back, the world doesn't look back and realize this was the biggest mistake we could have ever done. I don't know, it's crazy. But Orah, thank you so much, and I think we should definitely bring you on at some point again to discuss mental health issues. There's a lot going on. Another friend of mine wanted to actually discuss perinatal not postpartum, but perinatal depression.
Yeah.
Very
important, very, very, very real.
And we're going to delve into all of those topics, and I'm going to have doctors on and all sorts of other guests. But you, my dear, thank you so very much.
You're welcome. And if there are any of your followers have questions, please let them know, that I'd be happy to try my best to answer to the best of my ability.
Okay, great stuff. Yes, well, everyone can email me, rebelliousruthie@gmail.com. And thank you so much. So
have a wonderful day. Cool. Or evening, to say.
You day, me evening. Okay, hold on. Bye, everybody. TTFN. See you soon.